I am back here at the Cycle Collective in Dorking, Surrey, and I have a very cool gravel bike to show you today, the Cannondale TopStone. What I love about this is they've put some really different thinking into the bike, and I'm going to bring you in for a closer look and show you all the different features. First one being is that you can't really see it from that side, but this is a Lefty Fork, so there's just one side to the fork, and it's also got some rear suspension as well. Let's kick it off with that Lefty Fork here, and obviously you can see on that right side, nothing. And apparently the idea behind this is actually the suspension starts to flex on both sides when you're starting to go over some rough terrain. So that actually, when there's two, they kind of fight against each other, and it starts to introduce friction in the system where this moves up and down. But apparently when it's just on the left side, then there's less friction, so you get faster movement of your up and down on your suspension there. That's a theory. I've never actually tested it myself, but that's how it works apparently. Starting on the fork, you can also lock it out yourself as well. And this is actually nice and easy, just to flick with your thumb and your finger, depending if you want your suspension open or closed. Then another thing, when you want to take the wheel off, you actually have to pull this lever down. It's actually quite stiff. That releases the front brake. So if you do that here, and that means you can actually take the front brake off, but when you put it back on, it's perfectly adjusted again. And you need to take that front brake off if you want to take the wheel out this way, because you just undo it with the through axle bolt there. But theoretically, you shouldn't actually need to take the wheel off very often, because it's open on one side, you can change the tire with the wheel on the bike. Another thing, they've chosen to stick with a standard 27mm seat post, and that way you can get your dropper seat posts in there. And if you're going down steep terrain, well, you're going to know that actually these come in very, very useful. And that's just activated by pressing down here. A lot of gravel bikes deciding to go for the more D-shape for aerodynamics, but I actually think for a gravel bike, a dropper post works very well. If we start to move down, we actually come to our next big feature, and that is the Kingpin here. So this is actually more of a bushing than a bearing inside, so apparently when it gets dirty and stuff, you can just clean it and there's a lot less maintenance on there. But the most interesting thing about this is that there's designed to be lots of flex in here, and it pivots around this point. So apparently this will get up to 3 centimeters, which is about from there to there, in flex in the frame. Quite a lot of suspension when you think about some rear suspension without any moving parts. Then I had questions about this part here, so I was wondering why this was cut out, and that's actually designed so the frame can also flex here, so this can flex forward. Because the bottom flexes up so much, that actually needs to be some movement in the top here. Next up, adding to the features on this bike. So if you want, you can put your little battery pack here, and that way you can run their integrated light system on Cannondale here. But I know not many people use that. So people actually use this for different things. And this person here has used all these straps to hold in their inner tubes and their spares and stuff like that. So you can actually run the spares without having to have it on your seat post there. So quite a neat little solution. I do think generally I prefer Canyons where it has it in the tube. It looks a little bit tidier, but this is still a great solution. Sticking with the rear, you can fit both panniers and a mudguard on here. As you can see, we've got the mounting points. So the first one is here. The next one sits underneath right here, so you can see them bolted up there. And finally, you do have one more, which sits just tucked in there, the next little black bit. The other hole there is if you are running a derailleur, front derailleur on the front here. But as you can see, this one is running one by, and it's got a chain catcher to keep it attached there. When we come to the bottle cage mounts, on the front you do have options to have the front one lower or higher, but on the rear you only have the one placement option there. And of course, being a gravel bike, you do get a few extra mounting points on the bottom. So if you want to run spares underneath here, or if you just want an extra bottle to carry more water and fuel. Being a gravel bike, these handlebars do come flared as stock, not necessarily like the aero handlebar that you find on the Canyons nowadays, but for gravel it doesn't really matter so much unless you are racing. This bike is more designed to be a little bit more compliant and go for longer miles. Another thing I'd like to point out, this paint job, I'm actually really enjoying it. So you've got kind of like the yellow here, cream, orange, and it's kind of just chopped and changed as it goes through the bike. But whilst there are a lot of colours there, I think it's done quite tastefully. Another thing that I quite like on this bike is actually the Cannondale. It's not, what's the opposite of embossed? It's exposed as it comes out there, so you've actually got texture on their logo. This bike that I've got right here is size small, so probably a little bit smaller than the medium, as that's probably the average size, the medium there. So this is going to be way too small for someone like me, but if you're shorter in stature, this will probably fit you. Another thing to mention here is going to be the tyre clearance. You have so much space on the front here, you can actually run up to a 47mm tyre, and that's more restricted by the rear of the frame here. But 47 is still quite a wide tyre to run. Well everyone, there is the Cannondale TopStone, and like I said, it's a really unique bike. I think from Cannondale here, they've solved some certain issues, but maybe added some certain issues back into the bike as well. But it's a really cool gravel bike that has a lot more compliance and thoughtful, more endurance built in there. Sadly, I won't be able to get to ride this one because it's a bit too small for me, but if you have ridden one, I'd love to know how you've got along with it. Well guys, I've been Jason, this has been Cycling Unboxed, this has been the Cannondale TopStone, I'll see you in the next video.